Patrick here, back at you. 72 Advisors, check it out. Go to our website. There's some free resources available for you. We got a retirement masterclass. I got a working years masterclass, and it's really just all about trying to get you organized and make your financial life as simple as possible. And I know you're probably thinking, I don't know where to start with any of this stuff, whether you're working or whether you're retiring. But this video is just a quick sort of high level of some things that you can solve right now. You can think about it in the next couple weeks and get your retirement plan on track. If you don't have one, then I'm going to take you through a real overview, a brief sort of process that you can work through. But really, retirement is about this. You got to figure out what you want to do in your retirement years, whether it's working part-time, whether it's playing golf 4 times a week, whether it is doing church things with your community. It's completely up to you. Now, part of that is, do you have the financial resources to completely exit the workforce entirely? If the answer to that question is no, then we have to figure out how can we do like a hybrid retirement of where you don't work so much, but you still have some flexibility in your schedule. Now, if you've got funds to retire and you're completely golden there, then the door's just opened up for you. So ultimately, it's not about criticizing people that don't have or trying to figure out, okay, can I even do this at all? Most likely, the answer to that question is yes, you can do it, but what it looks like for you, we'll have to figure it out. So the conversation is really a fun conversation. It's all about looking over your life, looking over things that you've already done in your life, looking over your values. If you have never had a conversation about your values, then it's a good time to open that conversation piece. It may involve around faith. It may involve around your family. It may involve around traveling. There's so many different things that your retirement could look like. It's just, it's all about you. It's your life. This is your, last shebang, if you want to call it that. But I like to start with the end in mind. And so whenever I talk about the end in mind, I'm talking about estate planning. I'm talking about leaving funds to charities or leaving funds to your grandkids or your children. Maybe you have a goal of passing down the family farm. Then if that's what your legacy looks like, then pass down the family farm. I mean, there's so many different conversation pieces around estate planning, but the question is, how can we pass it down in a tax efficient manner? How can we pass it down in a manner that the next generation wants the family farm? If they don't want the family farm, then why are you going to give them the family farm? So maybe it looks a lot like selling the family farm and then divvying up the proceeds to the children. There's so many different ways to do this, but ultimately we talk about estate planning because it's what's going to happen. Whether it's 30 years from now, whether it's 10 years from now, the goal is to just make that process smooth. In the launch box that I put together, the workbook for retirees, I talk about the values and putting this process together. We put together some financial professionals, estate planning attorneys, tax people, and they're really working together to coordinate this plan that you want to put together. So it's not just one person. It's going to involve multiple people. It's going to involve looking through all of your accounts, all of your assets, and figuring out what does a beneficiary need to go on? Does a trust need to be set up? Does a joint owner need to be added to the account? There's different pieces along those. But ultimately, once we figure out the end, the rest gets a whole lot easier. So when we talk about income sources, well, do you have enough Social Security to live on? Is your portfolio large enough to where you could take 3 or 4% or 5% or 6% off of $500,000 or $1 million or $2 million, and you live on that without Social Security, so you can delay it for another couple years. It's really all about figuring out, what do you have in place, what lever can you pull at certain times, because there is a process in which you need to plan out certain buckets of money for certain time frames whether they have a tax impact or whether they are just based off of personal beliefs that you don't want to touch this account because it's for so-and-so, or there's different questions that have to be answered there. So figuring out, what are your income sources? Is it a portfolio? Is it Social Security? Is it rental income? There's so many different income sources that we have to figure out what that looks like. But ultimately, for a large portion of Americans' retirement, it's going to be figuring out, when do you take Social Security? And the question to that is, where do I go to figure that out? The answer is, you go to the ssa.gov and you put in your information, you set up an account, and I teach how to do this in my launch box, and I teach how to do it in the retirement series. But it's a very easy process. Whenever financial professionals say, "Hey, I'm going to help you," I'm going to tell you what you're going to get for Social Security. You can figure out what you're getting for Social Security on your own. Now, is it best to run that through a financial advisor that says, "Hey, maybe you want to delay it, or maybe you want to take it now, or maybe you want to pull off of a reverse mortgage for 2 years because it's a certain process that you need to go through"? What that process looks like for you, I don't know. You have to figure that out. There's a lot of financial products that they get a bad rap. So annuities get a bad rap. Reverse mortgages get a bad rap. Using home equity gets a bad rap. You have to figure out what your assets are and figure out, is this something that works for your situation? It may not work for 100 million other people, but if it works for your situation, it's a winning strategy. So when we talk about Social Security planning, it's really, we go straight to the source, and that's ssa.gov. We figure out, how can we get access to our work history so we can figure out what we're getting? Do I have a spouse that passed away already? Do I have a prior marriage that I could take benefits off of? Then that's completely on the table if that's your situation. So we just got to figure out, it's a combination of things there. It's a combination of, did you work for 40 years? Did your spouse work for 40 years? Were you a homemaker? There's so many different variables there. So that's why I say, if we go straight to the source, we can cut out a lot of this noise and get an answer for your situation. So when we talk about sequence of returns, what I'm talking about is, let's say you're retiring in 2007, and 2008, the market just dropped 50%, and you're also taking money out of that account. The goal is to avoid taking money out of buckets that are in the market that are, you're taking money out at the same time that the market is falling. This is a bad situation. It's one of the catastrophic bombs of retirement, if you want to call it that. So we figure out, okay, well, let's go ahead and put a plan in place for, where can we take money from whenever the market is taking a dump? 50%, 30%, 40%. We figure out, what is there a threshold that say, you know what, we're not taking any more money out of this bucket. We're pulling off the home equity for the next 12 months. And you've got $500,000 in equity sitting there. We just got to figure out, how can we do that in a efficient manner, which rolls into tax planning. So one of the things that I do with folks that are starting their retirement journey is, we figure out what is their tax rate, and we figure out where have they accumulated money for the last 30 years working. Was the decision made early on in the career to only fund a traditional IRA? Was there a decision made to start funding a Roth IRA? Was the money put all into a traditional 401k, or a portion of it into a Roth 401k? Do you have money in a brokerage accounts? There's different buckets of money, involve a different step process for figuring out which bucket we want to take out at which point in time. So when we talk about tax planning, Medicare timing, these also sort of flow together, because the Medicare decision of when to enroll, maybe you got hit with IRMA, but ultimately that is also a tax question / plan that you have to figure out as well. When I talk about financial plan monitoring, ultimately what that is figuring out all these different areas, and this isn't all of them in retirement, but these are the big areas. So ultimately what we want to do, put a plan together, get the big questions solved, get the answers solved, and then we sort of monitor that process. So that's it. Quick 10-minute overview of big problems to solve in retirement. And I hope this video helps. I'm Patrick. Send me a message. comment on the video if you like it. Be sure to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you.